Workshop session 6 begins with my presenting Bion, who developed an emotionality theory, the impact of emotions on group development. Concepts such as fight and flight, when a group runs away from painful or difficult issues, is included in his theory. We also do some exploration of the beginning of the ending and transition phase, the kind of work that needs to be done for foundation students and BSW and MSW graduate students. 3 major themes emerge in the discussion. One example of students very anxious over the second semester grades and the pressure they put on the instructor. An example of seniors in a BSW program and graduate students in an MSW program is very concerned about the transition to the next level, but presenting these concerns indirectly. And by the way, concerns about getting a job. Issues that start to emerge in the last semester of a student's education, and at least addressed and surfaced, make it difficult for the students to continue their learning. I do a presentation on the ending and transition phase, pointing out how this can be the most important phase of teaching, the most important classes for the whole student's educational experience, but for a number of reasons, they often become a moratorium on learning rather than the deepest and most important learning. We end the session with a discussion of how to address the quiet student who never speaks in a seminar class. You think it's a good time? People in panic? No, seriously, what is going on? Maybe you guys have some ideas based on what you're experiencing. Well, are you seeing it in the classes?
Everybody's sick, including me. We're sharing germs.
Really?
Because I think that's our immune systems are down, not so much mine.
Students are freaked out because they're having assignments due, and they are worrying about whether they're doing them correctly or not. I'm getting all kinds of emails and students acknowledging, are you inundated with emails yet? They're asking for reassurance and asking me to look over what they're doing, to tell them whether they're doing it right or not. And
you know, this is what you're talking about right now may very nicely fit Bion, so we'll come back to it. There's some connections.
Yes, there is.
Between the outline. But did you see the New York Times article, by the way, about strange emails that faculty have received?
No.
Oh, you didn't see that?
See that.
There was a wonderful article about 2 weeks ago.
Lots of strange ones.
Well, whatever describes an email, you get from an undergraduate student, and the email says, I'm sorry I couldn't come to class today. Did I miss anything?
I have about 3 of those on my email right now. Did I miss anything important? Only caveat.
They don't even get it.
No.
That really does raise concerns, doesn't it? Well, would that be an issue for folks right now, or are there other issues? Let's leave a few minutes to identify some examples. I think almost any example could fit very nicely with some discussion of Bion, or I'll present a little bit. I'd like to have some conversation about him. I'll go a little bit further in the outline, but then see if does he speak to us when we think about our groups. You know, is there something that he tells us that may help us understand our class group and the behavior? I think so. At least in my experience. I see it in my class groups all the time. You know, so is that an issue? Dealing with anxiety right now?
Absolutely.
Papers, demands, overwhelmed, help.
I'm getting a lot of gloom and doom about life after graduation. Like,
are you a second year student?
Yeah, second year, second semester. They're, I'm not going to have a job. I spent all this money. I went to school all this time, and I'm not going to have a job. And they're not real focused a whole lot on school. Some of them. They're focused on, let's get the heck out of here.
I had that last year when the county had all its fiscal problems, that people were really freaked out about this time of year, that they weren't going to get a job.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just that time of year anyway.
And I'm saying, come on, guys, stay invested. Stay invested. There's still things you can learn here. Come on.
Stay with me.
Well, what you're talking about is premature ending.
Right.
That people in the 4th semester, I think that'd be interesting to look at as well, because what it does is it helps us to look at the student issues based on where they are in the curriculum and where they are in the educational life cycle. And it's different for 4th semester students. Your semester students are
second
semester, so they're in their first year.
And they're second semester part-time. So.
Yeah, so I think we should look at both, don't you? Always there? Are you there? Yeah, come on in. It's okay.
They won't bite.
That's all right.
Bye, guys.
Did you bring enough for the whole class?
Yeah. Each have 2 bites. She gets the food and he gets the kids. I'm not sure about this.
You got a good system already.
On Wednesdays at least.
Goodbye, guys. Nice to see you again.
Rebecca coats and stuff.
They're in the van.
Mom, where are you going?
Sorry, guys.
Where are you going?
I'm staying here and you're going with Daddy.
Okay.
This is one of the realities, right?
Oh, you better.
Probably not just for you, but for other students. Nice to see you again. Take care, kid. It really is, isn't it? Meeting demands of family. And I'm sure some of you students, I want to make sure that's close to we go any further. Yeah. Thanks. So you want to look at that right now? Like what's happening in the classes for people in the first year, et cetera, around anxiety around papers, as well as health. The issue of people just feeling very tired and very sick, and I think I know exactly what you mean. I've seen it, around. And then the second issue, thinking a little bit by tuning in to what are the issues in the 4th semester, what are the issues for people living here with the economy is in trouble, where there has been cutbacks. They're not making this up. This is true, and how possibly to help them address the ending and transition of their educational experience. We've talked already about the beginning phase, the middle phase, ending and transition phase for some students.
For the 4th hour.
You know what's up. We move quickly now. It's a lot of stuff. Well, Bion, I got very attracted to Bion when I read about him in my Ed Psych doctoral program. He is a little weird, I have to say that. And if you do go back and read the original stuff, which I really recommend, Experience in Groups, it was a series of articles that he published one month after another in a journal called The Human Group. I'm not even sure it publishes anymore. And they took all those articles and put it together and put it into a book. And he was a fascinating guy who wrote the process of what was going on in his group. He was at the Tavistock Institute in England. And he really founded a lot of the stuff that we now think of in terms of encounter groups and experiential groups. Bion was one of the first people who did that. And what he would do is he would just come in, literally, sit, start his groups. The people he worked with were mostly veterans who were in psychiatric hospital or VA hospital. And he would observe what was going on. And he would comment constantly. So if the group was acting as if this basic assumption group, the dependent group, he would just comment to them. He would just keep describing to them what he saw happening. Bion, like Rogers and like a number of others who I like but disagree with, in some areas left himself out. In other words, his emotional reactions aren't going to be part of it. In fact, what he said was if he was having emotional reactions, it was probably, as he began to see it, a projective identification issue. A word we now use, Melanie Klein uses it now in family therapy. It started with Bion. And what Bion said was when people felt, for example, anxious or scared or frightened or whatever, the clients, the people in the group, would project onto him the feelings they were having. So he never actually looked at his real feelings, is what I'm saying. And everything was interpreted as a reflection. But the idea of projective identification is an incredibly good one. When I think about groups I've led, or classes, where I have been made to feel defensive, on the spot, upset, angry, whatever, I have found so often that is really a message to me, that the way in which the group unconsciously and the class is communicating to me what they're going through. Am I making any sense on that? So projective identification is one of those more powerful ideas. The hardest part about Bion is that people have to understand that he's talking about one group. But he describes, in our case, the class, in another case, the group, he describes it as when it's working well on what it's supposed to be doing, it's the work group. So when your class is clicking and people are investing themselves and they are working and challenging ideas and sharing stuff, etc., what we see in front of us is what he calls the work group. He suggested that when things got difficult, painful, tough to deal with in the therapy group, for example, the group would change before his eyes. It's the same people, but now it might be the fight-flight group. And what it meant was that they've created internally a shared basic assumption that the reason they're together is not to work. The reason they're together is to go off into fight or flight, arguments between members, joking. How often in your therapeutic work, in a group, if you've done group, when people have joked in a group, when you reached underneath the joking, it was serious. So joking becomes a form of play. How often do we see workers in agencies who are stressed by traumatic events, death of a kid, suicide, attack of a worker, go off into macabre humor, where they start making jokes, which they never would share with the public, and then they go home and cry. Not at the office, because that's what Bion would call a maladaptive way of dealing with this problem. So the basic assumption groups, which is the hardest thing for my students to get when I do the reading, and I always give it to them first as a lecture and then tell them to read, not the other way around. They think, is that another group? It's not another group. It's the same group, but they're all acting as if they shared a basic assumption that the reason for being there is to have fight or flight as a way of avoiding facing painful issues. Let me just stop for a second. The dependent group is very much like Benison Shepherd, we talked about last time. And that's what you often see in the beginning, but you see it at other times as well. The whole class or group is acting as if they're sharing a basic assumption that the reason they exist is to be dependent on you. And that's what Bion would notice. And so he would reflect that back. He would say things like, I'm getting the feeling right now, all of you want me to do something, you know? And he's right. His theory was, as you reflected back, people could take control and grow and develop and become a more sophisticated group. And a more sophisticated group was a group that could deal directly with difficult emotions and feelings. The pairing group was an interesting one. He noticed every once in a while when the group got into difficult issues, two members of the group, sometimes on opposite sides of the room, would start to talk about this great, wonderful future event. Something that's going to happen. I think I gave the example in the handout, and there's a number in my textbook. People with kids who have attention deficit disorder a number of years ago, and it was still a little bit unknown what it was all about. So it's a parents group, and then they're talking. One of the parents is talking in the process record about a very difficult time she and her husband had and how it was affecting the other kids. And so they're starting to approach a really, really painful issue. She's even starting to talk a little bit about the anger she feels towards the kid, which is stuff that's very intolerable for parents like this, to address the fact that they sometimes feel like shaking him, or they sometimes feel like, I wish I didn't have this kid. Those are feelings that you could share. So all of a sudden in the group, this person and this parent, this person says, you know, I've heard there's a new drug coming out, a new procedure. Oh, I've heard that too. And the whole group sits, literally. I've seen it so often. And these two carry on a conversation. That's why he calls it the pairing group, in which hopefulness, some event in the future, something's going to happen, I'll get a job, the economy will turn around, I'm thinking of your examples, becomes once again a way of kind of avoiding the issues. In therapy, Bion thought our job was to help groups become more sophisticated so that they didn't go off into the basic assumption groups, but instead were able to work as a work group. That's essentially. He also felt that everybody, every one of those groups, the work group, the pairing group, the fight-flight group, the dependent group, all had internal leaders. It could be different people at different times. So Jim is the one we can always count on to pick a fight if we get close. You know, Amy, you know, was the one who's going to talk about this wonderful thing in the future when she'll have her dissertation written for her by machine and she won't have to worry about something. So she'll become and take on the role. Just think about your classes for a minute. Who in your class is the work group leader? The students in your class who actually do take risks, get into work, and which are the students who sometimes start to talk and appear to go off on a totally different topic, and you can't figure out what the hell it has to do with what's going on. Bion would say that's the fight group, and that going off like that is a form of, well, two things, avoiding issues, but also signaling to you, the teacher, in my view, when I translate Bion, that you're dealing with something that the whole class is having trouble with. And so this guy or woman has become the flight leader. He also talked about a number of other things. I don't think I put it all in. He talked about valency, V-A-L-E-N-C-Y, was the group's ability to immediately have a kind of a valence. I think he's borrowing Kurt Lewin, who did a lot of group theory around valences, forces, and then, boom, right before your eyes, the class changes, or the group changes. And now they're acting as if they share the basic assumption. Am I making sense on the basic assumption groups? A lot of people, there's a jump you have to make to understand it's the same group, same people. They're acting as if they were one of these assumption groups. He also talks about the schisms. Where he got a little bit interesting, I want to make sure I say it straight, is he started to think about our society and our world. He felt that there might be the religion, the church, he really thought was maybe the larger parent group, unborn leader, a religious view about some future event that was going to happen, life after, understand? He was thinking that, he was just speculating that maybe in our society, in order not to deal with certain difficult issues, we developed this pairing idea, and religion became that. And think about people who were slaves, and the role of religion in their lives was, maybe we're not going to get it in this life, but there's some future where we'll finally be respected, where we'll finally have a life that's real. Guess who he felt, which institution he felt represented the fight-flight group? The army, the military, and that war on a global scale, war on an international scale, was an expression of this. Now, I thought he got a little flaky when he got into that, but still, it's an interesting idea. He was trying to take the dynamics in a small group. He was trying to see their application in our society, in our world. Let me see if there's anything else that would be helpful to you. I'm not going to go into the proto-mental systems. You can read that yourself. But essentially, if we think about Bennis and Shepard, the information we got there was developmental in nature. It looked at a class or a group developing over time. If you remember, we talked about dependency, and then authority and intimacy is the two sets. Bion is emotionality. Bion's central ideas is that emotions are operating all the time, and the inability to cope with or deal with difficult emotions causes the group to flee from the work group and to become one of the basic assumption groups. Holman's, who I think I'd like to talk a little about next time, and maybe relevant even today, is more of a systems theory person, and he likes to look at the nature of the group and the larger system around it and how the group is interacting and affecting and being affected. So if you want, I'll bring a couple of ideas from Holman's next time. To me, those are the big three: Bennis and Shepard, Bion, and Holman's. A lot of stuff you read now is rooted in their work. They don't always use the same word, and they don't always cite them or say this is where it came from. But this is where it did come from. Holman's systems theory, Bion emotionality, Bennis and Shepard developmental. Anyway, comments about Bion. I saw a lot of head shaking when I was describing it. What were you thinking? Were you making some associations to your classes or therapeutic groups? Some of you work groups. Anybody? Let's talk a little bit about it, and then let's connect it to what you were raising right now, which is the anxiety over classes. Reactions. Floor's open.
Well, I think that I'm really relating it to an anxiety about grades, about doing things well, about being judged. And these are relatively new students. They're part-time programs, so second semester. They really don't have a lot of experience, and I think that they are they're looking for acknowledgement, somebody that's going to say you really can do okay in the program, you really can do this. And I think that anxiety really came out, and I'm having to kind of talk with them about the fact that yes, you are being evaluated, and this is a course in social work evaluation. And so I kind of put it back. I said, that's what we're teaching you about, is how to evaluate, and of course that's part of what goes on with the course. And so I start using the terminology. I said we have certain targets, we have operational definitions, and that certainly is being used for there. But I think that the issue is that I have to find a way to talk about the fact that I understand that they're anxious, and that
it's not about up here.
It's not about up there. It really is, and I've gotten lots of different. It's happening on a lot of different levels, but it seems mostly to be around grading.
Reactions. I mean, you've seen similar stuff around.
Well, as you're talking, I can think about therapeutic groups I ran and classes with all of these things happening. But when I think about my current, because I have the undergraduate students, I'm thinking about my senior classes, so I can clearly identify the people who are like the leaders of the work group, very routinely come play that role.
They're the internal leaders.
Yeah.
You're the external leaders.
Yeah.
You carry the authority.
Mhm.
They get their authority from the group
Yeah.
and from their behaviors.
Absolutely. And then just the two things. One about looking to me to address their anxieties for the seniors, because I think I have bumped up their assignments, trying to make their assignments like a transitional assignment between undergraduate and graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pretty anxious about that, and I've had this semester so far like probably 10 times more people come to my office hours than I have the whole rest of the year because of these kinds of assignments. So and also the presentations, and my whole while giving them some facts, my whole like commentary on the thing is, you need to relax. You don't have to be so anxious. We can get through this. Let me work. We can work together. Right. Don't just really trying to identify the anxiety. Is that saying, I know you're anxious. I know, but it'll be okay. And giving them some feedback on the concreteness, and so far for most people, I can think of one that probably didn't work, but for most people it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. But when they come in, they can hardly talk because they're so nervous about what these newfangled expectations are.
And also, what was the course you're teaching in evaluation?
This course is that I'm thinking about is the senior seminar, the senior methods class.
In
undergraduate school, yeah. The social work methods class.
So you're dealing with students who are anxious about making a transition from undergraduate to graduate, and you're provoking some of it by asking them to start thinking about graduate level work. Yeah. You're dealing with students who are in the end of their first year, part-time students, so they haven't had a lot of courses. Right. And they got an evaluation course now, which is a tough course. They perceive it's a tough course, and they're anxious suddenly about how are they doing. Right. And you're dealing with students who are in the ending and transition to it.
In electives, so they've chosen. I mean, that certainly is something they want to be in. But I was thinking when you were talking about, I have one particular student who, I mean, really, it's a great bunch of students. I'm thrilled this semester. They're just, most of them are hard workers. And really, they facilitate class very nicely. That's one of their assignments, and so they're able to disagree with each other and really be critical thinkers. So all in all, I just think they're a great bunch of students.
The title of the course again? Just
Play therapy.
Play therapy.
So they know how to play.
Well, actually,
they
don't.
They have it on the report card, where it says works well and plays well.
They think I'm insane because I love to play and I'm comfortable with playing, and that's actually, this is a side note, but it's actually one of the goals of the class is to help them
comfortable
with play with kids. You got to be able to do that if you're going to work with kids,
But say something about that one person, then we'll come back to each.
What I was going to say is that I was trying to fit her in, and I think it would be a flight kind of thing. But she does this every week. Sits right next to the door. It's like right here. The door is right here.
Quick escape if she needs it.
And at least a half a dozen times during class, she opens it and kind of goes,
oh my goodness,
and gets air. And she
that's a new one.
And she also will come in and say, I have a headache. And then it's, oh, I think I'm getting sick. And then it's, oh, I'm not going to get a job. I mean, it's just every single week. And she really, I believe, doesn't, and this again could be a huge assumption on my end, but what I'm seeing is you don't want to do this work anymore. You're done. Because her effort that she puts forth, she says, oh, I just didn't get this article, and she's the only one who didn't get it, and you know what I'm saying? There's just all of this.
And yet you've also said that that you think that the other students in the class, even those who aren't sticking their head out for air, that other students in the class normally. It's a normative time
Right.
for people to begin to wonder about the transition
Mm-hmm.
and to start to pull back. And we do therapy work. We know that as you approach the ending, some of the most important work can take place.
Right.
And one of the things people do in endings is that they regress a little bit and they pull back a little bit. And it's a sort of the pause before the next big jump.
Right.
You know, and in many ways, you're also dealing with a class that's finishing its last class, ending its educational experience, saying goodbye to friends and people, you know, who they're probably not going to see again.
Yeah.
For most of them, if they don't become PhD students, it's going to be their last educational experience. This is really quite a crisis, quite a life cycle.
I had one student say right in the beginning of, it was the first week of class, he said, we were under the understanding that second semester, second year, our professors would be understanding of the fact that we're getting ready to go out into the field, we're looking for jobs, so the syllabus would reflect that in the expectations. I looked at him and said, you should have sent that memo like 6 weeks ago because the syllabus is already done, I'm sorry, you know? But there was an expectation that there would be less of a workload because, you know, we're on our way out.
And we took a course on play therapy, which isn't serious.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Don't you get it here, you know?
If I could have gotten phys ed, I would have taken it.
Basket was available. Yeah, so there were a couple of those comments that led me to believe, wow, you guys are, some of you are just done. You know?
Done.
You're taking this because you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Get, you know, a few more credits.
Right.
But mentally, you're out the door.
Well, I mean, we get 3 different examples. I think it'd be interesting to try to see what would Bion say, you know, if he had, you know, this thing going on in a class. Go back. Let's start right with Jim and just work right our way around. I think all 3 are very interesting examples. I think we could probably do all 3 if we paid attention. I think we need 4 hours. 4 hours.
You're going strong.
You work within the structure, right? You have an hour.
Right.
You deal with the content. You deal with the process. And you keep an eye on the clock. That's what this is all about. Right?
Multitasking.
Jim, describe a moment in the class recently where you've seen this immersion. What did it look like? How did you see it? In other words, what was it like? Give us a little of the process.
First of all, there's an extra process here because my students use Blackboard quite a bit, and it's optional this semester, but they can go in. So usually they start by putting a posting on Blackboard.
Oh, that's interesting. You like
so that they can put it out there.
Like what? So give us an example. What was a posting?
Well,
for anybody who doesn't know, who's watching this later, Blackboard is very much part of a teaching tool. All classes can use it.
Yes, so it's an online resource.
Right,
and so I've had them put in comments about, well, first of all, it kind of got to be a 1, 2, 3. They had a grade for class participation, a grade for the first paper, which was due, and then kind of we have another paper due, and they have a quiz. And so it all was in a couple of weeks' time. And
so what was the comment that was posted?
So the comment was a lot of one of the comments was I didn't think that I would be penalized for coming to class and taking notes but not saying anything. And that person got a B in class participation. And another person said that I'm not really good at saying things in class, and the fact that I only got a B was really upsetting to me. And those weren't exact words. And then then it kind of moved from that, because that was the first piece of information they had. And then the next class after that, I addressed the anxiety about grades.
What'd you say? Let's get some. You know how we work.
Yeah.
Give us some of the details.
Well, what I said to them was, I said, you know, I started by saying I know that a lot of people were anxious about the grades that I gave you, and I wanted to tell you about that. First of all, I gave you a grade for class participation at the first third of the class so that you'd have some feedback from me and weren't just getting that grade at the end. I said all of you knew that you were going to be graded at it.
Stop.
Okay.
Go to class. How are you experiencing Jim right now?
Defensive.
You defensive.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive. What's that doing to you in the class right now?
Shut down.
You're shutting down.
I'm never going to open my mouth.
Oh, well, that didn't happen in this class, I can tell you that.
Are you taking it in? Just stop for a second, because Because you said, I know all of you are experiencing some anxiety about your grades.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of saying, so let's talk about it. What is the anxiety that you're experiencing? Understand? Instead of saying that, we start to explain what would the difference be if Jim at that point says, you know, that anxiety can immobilize us at this point. I'm going to share a little bit more information, but before I do, what exactly is it that you're experiencing? What would you say? You understand the difference between those two, Jim? What would you say?
It's validating.
It's validating. It's okay to feel that way. Others, what else would you say? Are you also getting a message about it's okay to post stuff?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's okay to open up.
To open up. Have you had a lot of instructors who've encouraged that in the past, and the first time you did do something, they shut you off or turned you down? So we're still dealing with how do you relate to somebody's position of authority. What else? Reactions. Give you some feedback. Whenever he raises these issues, even if you get a little defensive when we give you feedback, you're always working on them. I know you are. I know you are. So give him a little more feedback on that, because you didn't think you were sounding defensive, but everyone in the room just now did.
One of the expressions.
They felt it, that you were defensive.
One of the expressions that I use both in therapy and in class is "tell me more." Simple. You know, as soon as you hear an emotional reaction of some kind, tell me more about that.
So what is it that happens to us as teachers?
I was just going to say,
what
I
is
think
it, Rebecca? It's not
some
Jim.
of it is, and this might not be it for you, Jim, but for me is that there must be something I've done wrong. So I need
that's
to
the
fix
defensiveness.
it. You know, and so when I hear complaints, you automatically kind of move into this problem-solving mode, rather than this may have very little to do with, you know, the actual grade and have a lot more to do with something else that's going on.
That's why I say tell me more. I don't know what they're talking about.
Right, exactly.
You know, there isn't enough information.
Well, it's really ironic, isn't it? Because sometimes you're getting a reaction from the class, not because of something you did wrong, but something you did right.
Right.
You know, Jim gave early feedback. Jim made clear his expectations. Started to let people know, you know, early in the semester. Sorry?
I did it all right. What's the matter with
I did. Well, but there you go. You're doing it right.
Just because you're doing it right doesn't mean everybody's going to be happy
What's
about
right?
it.
Not at all. And in fact, if you're a good teacher, there are going to be days when people are going to be pissed off. You know, you're making demands. Elaine's talking about asking undergraduate students to start to step up a little bit and think of a higher level of demands. In some ways, they're very grateful, because that's what they're worried about, making the transition. In other words, I think they might be a little angry or upset that they're being pushed in undergraduate to start to do
I
this.
really think that there's many similarities, and pardon me for using toddlers as an example, but that's kind of reality right now. So there's a huge similarity between when you draw the line with a student at a different point, the acting out kinds of like, I don't like this, and I'm going to say I don't like it. And now if, just as a parent, if I were to say, oh, okay, well then I'll change that for you because you don't like it. I mean, that's not really what my role is in that situation. I don't see that, you know, as your role as a teacher, that you don't need to change anything, but I can listen to my toddler and say, yeah, you don't like that. Yeah, you mad.
But you understand that
And
it would scare the heck out of you kids if you didn't set limits, if you didn't protect them, if you didn't let them know that they're going to be safe because they got a parent who isn't going to.
Right. Just as I wouldn't want them to think they couldn't tell me that it made them mad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that the classroom in some ways, I want them to tell me, I'm pissed off at you, Rebecca, because you said this and then this happened, or, you know, or you said this and you followed through, but I'm still mad at you. Okay.
And I know it's not rational.
Right.
But I still feel it.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we have to live with. But I think Jim, what Bion would say is that you've got a group that's going into fight-flight mode, you know, in reaction to the anxiety. If you were Bion, instead of trying to feel defending about why you did what you did or reassure them or give them all these explanations, every bit of which is true. You know, if I know anything about Jim over the years, it's very clear. His syllabus is clear. His expectations are clear. Jim doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room, which I think students find very difficult to deal with. So he's very clear. So what Bion would say is, let's reflect it back to them. Well, you guys are all angry at me, and I think I understand why. I'm making expectations on you. You're all anxious about getting your grades. Let's talk a little bit about what you're experiencing right now. I want that anger out of the table, but I want it out in an adaptive way. Because otherwise I'm going to get it in a maladaptive way. I'll get it indirectly, I'll get it through silence, I'll get it through acting out, I'll get it through people not coming to class, but I have it on the table. In the end, I have to say, well, we may disagree on this, and I'll try to be aware of it, but I think I do have to give you grades. That's part of what it's about. I also like the part where Jim is always conscious of content and process, but I think too premature. So at the beginning, if we say to the class, well, wait a minute, this is a class on evaluation. That's what we're doing. We're evaluating. You're absolutely right. What's going on in the class is a wonderful illustration of the content. But you're trying to do that, and they're not there. They're still back in the fight-flight group. Am I making sense at all? And those students who posted on the bulletin board, those are the fight-flight leaders in the group. I'll bet you anything, once they start to deal with the anxiety, there'll be internal work group leaders. There will be people who will take some responsibility for saying things like, it's actually good to be clear, and I'm glad you are, saying it. Once the culture is established, being straight with us. Am I making sense at all? At this point, you're looking thoughtful. How about you, Jim?
No, it is. And part of the thing is despite the fact about being defensive, which I can really see, I must have done something right, because the amount of postings actually increased. The amount of feedback that I got actually increased, and I had just as many people posting that they appreciated the clarity and they appreciated what was going on as the others. So something's going on, and I'll have to kind of take a look at that to find out what else I did, because I'm going to have to
go back and talk to the class about it.
Yeah, I will.
One of the things that's come up over and over again is to go back and talk to the class. I was thinking about last week and the postings, and I probably got a little defensive when you raised this.
One of the things that I know happened is one of their first paper, I told them that my expectations for the paper were more than what I thought. They were greater than what they could do. That what I realized is they haven't had any practice courses yet. And so a lot of evaluations based upon knowing something about practice. I can't expect you to know anything about practice, so I didn't grade that.
So what Jim is also working, and those of you who teach part-time program know that the structure of our part-time program is such, because of field work, that students end up taking courses that often raise their anxiety before they actually have a chance to go out and see clients.
Right.
And that's another kind of anxiety. Jim, I want to pick up a little better because of time. Elaine, what's Bion saying to you about yours?
Well, what's he saying to me about that class? That I guess looking at these, that I have I think a pretty broad range of people who are at all developmental levels in this class that I'm thinking about. So I have pretty consistently some people who are what I identify as the work group leaders, so that's a small cadre of people. I have a bigger group of the fight-flight group.
Give us an example from a class.
Okay.
What's it look like?
Okay, so this past Monday, where there was a case presentation and analysis, and a whole little section of people who were complaining about the way the client responded to the intervention, and I don't know. I mean, I guess the best way I could say was they were just plain whining about having to do anything that was mature and independent and responsible, and they just were like kind of like a toddler, like stamping their feet and saying, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to work that way with the client. I don't think that's fair. If it was me, I wouldn't like it.
Are they in the field, by the way?
Yeah.
Are they clients that they're dealing with?
Yeah. So they were, and then so they were like having that kind of like whining episode, and then the 3 people who were like kind of the work group people they were really tentative about like disagreeing with this group. They tried to be more constructive and mature in their presentation and talk about what, like have some theory about why they were saying what they were saying would be appropriate intervention. But they were really kind of afraid of this angry, whiny.
There's a schism. Bion talks about schisms.
Yeah.
Suddenly the group polarizes, and it's a schism. A very important idea. So what do you think might be happening? 4th semester, you're making some more demands. They're getting ready to make a transition. Most of them are going to go on to graduate school. Am I correct? This is the BSW, by the way.
Yes.
The BSW program. They're getting ready to graduate. They're a little younger than some of the students that we've been talking about. Well, what might be happening right at that moment in the class, right at the moment, that's causing the schism, and a schism which is really blocking the ability to learn? Do you have an idea?
Well, I was thinking even like maybe some competency kinds of issues on the, a lot of times when we have a lot of resistance about things, it's usually because it's pushing on some insecurities or that type of thing. And the work group is, I think it's different the way people see learning as well. If you view it, the work group is probably saying, we can do this, and keeps working, and but others are, who may not have that maturity yet are saying, I don't like it, and it's hard, so.
It's interesting. It's almost like they're saying, if only I had a better client, it would be going well.
Right, exactly.
If the client was better. If the client was able to do the job better.
If only I had a better client.
Well, I think part of it was like that. If the client had the same values, the problem is this client doesn't have the same values I do. So there's something wrong with the client. That was definitely
That's exactly what he's saying.
What that was happening.
And some of that is developmental. Don't you
Yeah.
think?
Yes.
There could also be like the frustration. I mean, right around this time of year, they probably already sent out their applications for like MSW programs, and that might be the group of people that hasn't heard back yet, or they may have expected that they should have known by now, and what am I doing wrong? Because that's kind of like what they're saying. They're not necessarily taking the blame, but it's still kind of the same feeling, like what's going on that's wrong, that I'm not getting this and it's not working.
Yeah.
Good point.
So this time of year, if we think about where they are in the educational life cycle, 4th year BSW is getting ready for a transition to graduate school, but also in the February-March period of the year, is this the time of year when people start realizing it isn't so easy to help people? Is this the time of year when people...
Well, it's also developmental, personal, their age.
That's right.
Their chronological age.
Yeah, we don't want to forget that because they're at a certain age. They're still young.
So there's judgments.
So is this the time when you start to feel, as Amy points out, maybe I'm not competent, and so maybe I should blame the client, I'm getting ready to graduate? I mean, people have artificial views, really, about how people change, and you can't help people that easily.
That is definitely true. It's a real culture shock that you don't just tell people what they should do and then they automatically just magically do it. This is like totally shocking to them, number one. Number two, I think part of, when I think about who these two groups are, the what is it, the right lingo here? The fight-flight group, they are chronologically younger than the work group. It's definitely true. And I think the work group, they're very motivated. The work group leaders are very motivated to go to graduate school. Very, very motivated.
Are they older?
Yeah, and they're older. And the fight-flight group, while they give... Well, they want to go to graduate school.
I'm going to try to stay a little pristine in terms of Bion. They're not the fight group, they're the leaders. In other words, because what happens at that moment is the group starts to act as if the basic assumption is fight-flight.
Yeah. So
it's a tendency we all have. It's so simple and it's logical. We assign to that subgroup that they're the fight-flight group.
No, they're the leaders. That's
they're
absolutely right.
Leaders for class group.
I can look out at the other students and see who fits into that group who aren't saying anything.
Yeah, but they're the leaders of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The reason why, and you've already identified in part, That they're younger, they're more mature.
And they're ambivalent. They're ambivalent about, yes, I want to go to graduate school, that's what I'm supposed to do, but staying in undergraduate school would be much more fun.
Now, what did you say when this thing broke out and the other students were trying to justify it and they're whining about these clients who don't respond the way they say, I did, I tried an evidence-based practice and nothing happened. You know, what do you say? What did you say?
Well, I didn't do anything about process.
No? What did you say?
I talked about the clinical issues.
And what did you feel at the moment? What were you feeling?
I felt anxious. And I wanted to go into my head and be
we got a defensive bunch of students who projects on the gym defensiveness. Right. We have an anxious bunch of students who project onto Elaine. Right. This is what Bion would say.
This is a classic.
And what Bion, I don't, completely follow Bion. But what he would say is use your own feelings. Mm-hmm. That your own feelings are an important cue at the moment about what's happening in the class or in the group. Mm-hmm. And so if you're feeling anxious, and if you could separate a little bit from that, or even do it the next day, come into the next class and say...
That I would definitely be comfortable.
Understand? But if you could do it at the moment, what Bion would say is, look, I'm feeling a little anxious right now about this discussion. I'm not sure what it's all about. And let's open it up. I mean, with hindsight and tuning in this room, we can all see how they're raising a fundamentally important issue. And what the schism is between the students who have made up their mind, who are starting to understand what this process is about, want to go on to graduate school, and a bunch of students who are realizing, this ain't so easy. I'm not going to solve her problems by taking her to church with me on Sunday. Mm-hmm. There's a process that's involved. It's
funny you say that because it's part of the issue, religion.
Well, and wouldn't religion be an issue that generates a lot of anxiety in any class or any discussion?
Try my spirituality class.
Right.
Yeah.
And even though spirituality and religion may be quite different.
Yeah, but they're anxious
it's an anxious topic at that point. Mm-hmm. So on reflection, Elaine, any thoughts about if you had that moment over again? Because you were a little angry at that. So you were treating them, when you called whining, you said whining.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, I was annoyed.
And so what we're doing is we're modeling, they're mad at their clients, and you're mad at them.
Yeah.
You understand?
A little process.
You understand what I'm saying? And they're not dealing with their clients, which is underneath what's going on in terms of the lack of change of process, and we're not dealing with them. So we got to model what we preach, what we want to preach anyway. At that point, if you had the moment over again, what would you do?
I don't know. Right off the bat, I think so. I might say, this is really hard, isn't it? What's it like when you're working with someone that gets to be so hard? Tell me about.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's open it up. Yeah. It's okay what you're raising, and this time of year it's not unusual. People are getting ready to graduate. They started off with high hopes, and they got in the field and they thought they were going to really be able to help people, and they realized it's not that simple. Mm-hmm. In other words, I can come up with a number of different comments right now in hindsight. Yeah. That would open up an important discussion for these students that is very appropriate for their age and stage and where they are in making the transition to graduate school, if they're going to make it. Mm-hmm. Maybe we have a discussion about people realize maybe this isn't for me. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was. Or maybe it is, and I'm just being too harsh on myself, expecting changes. That's wonderful discussion, exactly for this time of year, for these students. Mm-hmm. Is that hitting home or making sense to everybody? Don't say anything extremely significant for 2 minutes. I'm just going to get some water. My mouth's dry. But you can talk.
I can?
Yeah, you can talk. I'll see you tape later.
Well, listen.
I'm not supposed to say anything important.
All right, just like in class.
I won't.
Isn't it amazing that the students don't realize that that's the question you have to ask your friends, not the one you ask your teacher?
What she said, I heard a good laugh. What was it?
She said, I'm not supposed to say anything important, so it was silent.
It's just
right.
So
it's
what's going on in a play therapy class? People graduating, we're in the 4th semester. Maybe we should do a little tuning in. Remember back to when you were in your 4th semester. Remember like when you were graduating from your MSW program or when you were getting out of your PhD program. What are some of the dynamics that are taking place in the ending and transition stage of your educational experience? Because that's what it is. And it starts with the break. The break triggers it.
Yeah.
The break triggers it. Because as soon as they have the break, it starts that whole process of thinking about this is the last semester. You know, it triggers it.
I get a feeling from my students, the metaphor I use is they're full. They can't take in anymore. It's like they push it away because there's just no more room in my brain for more stuff. That's the feeling I get. So they kind of shut down.
And when you push it a little bit, what they'll say is, I don't want to know more that I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they're at the stage where now, if they're doing a good job and you're doing a good job, not only are they learning more content, they're also opening up areas of ambiguity. They have to learn how to tolerate that ambiguity. They have to realize that they're about to graduate and they're not a finished product. My own view is I tell students, I say at graduation, I said if we've done a good job, you know, we've helped you learn how to tolerate ambiguity, so you don't come to closure. That you realize you're going to spend the rest of your professional life continuing to learn, and we've given you the tools so that you can continue to learn. You're not a finished product. But a lot of people start the program thinking at the end of the 2 years master's, I'm going to be a finished product. I think that's a piece of it.
I do, because one of the things that's come up is, and it's kind of like an Achilles heel for me anyway, but is that they don't have a lot of knowledge of child development. And so for my class, we talk a lot about what's appropriate at different developmental stages with kids. And so that you know when somebody's acting within those normal ranges and when they're not. And so there's been a couple of things that have come up, like, I can't believe we haven't been prepared for, you know, working with kids, and, you know, yeah, we had HBSC, but that just focuses on the whole thing. It doesn't, you know, so there's some...
Do you remember what you said, Rebecca, when you said that?
Did you say
it's the Achilles heel?
Well, the reason is because I think there needs to be a little bit more importance from my perspective. But what I said to them, I said, right. I said, so what your job will be when you get out of here is to make sure that you continue learning. And I said, and I can give you resources, but I also shared with them the experience of when I got out and said, I remember when I had my first job and I was working with children, and I went into my supervisor and I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to work with little kids. And I said, and so what that told me is that I needed to continue being a learner.
And what they said?
And they were like...
Is that when she opened the door and took a deep breath of air?
No.
Oh.
They said, and I said that I had some resources. They were like, can you post the resources? And I said, sure.
See, what I think happens, and it's instinctual. Self-disclosure can be great. I mean, those experiences students like to hear. The question is when. When do we share this information? Or when do we say, tell me more? You know, Bonnie's continuous question. In other words, when students say, I don't think I've learned enough about working with children, and that triggers a part of us which says, you're damn right, this school should be doing a lot more work on the curriculum with kids. Of course, if you're looking at the realities of the program, you realize there are dozens of areas we should be doing more work. Every single student should have a group work course where they got this group. And I'm still fighting that one. So what I'm saying is they touch something inside of us, and we start to talk to them about the future learning, my experiences, all of which are helpful. But I'm not sure they're still hearing it at that point.
Right. They're wanting to say...
They want to talk a little bit more about their anxieties that are very appropriate. And it's not just about kids and child development theory.
Right.
I think it's the larger issue. Of, am I prepared to be a professional, to get my license, to go out and actually start to practice, not to have the teacher in the class anymore. Now I'm going to be much more independent. So it becomes a wonderful opportunity for that discussion and that anxiety, and then sharing some of your own views, extremely helpful. That also then becomes one of the goals of this class. Let's say one of the things we're going to do in this class during the semester, we're going to help you identify those areas where you think you need more work, and we're going to talk about how you can use each other and how you can use the literature and the assignments and supervisors in order to develop that area. But you're not a finished product. I mean, it's a myth that you graduate with your MSW, you're ready to start practicing. You're just beginning. You know, if we've done a good job, you're a good beginner at practice, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them. So know what happens in each case. It touches something inside of us, and it triggers either a defensive response or a closure to the topic, or try to reassure them. I went through the experience. Everything except dealing with the underlying anxiety. It's almost like the instructor participates in the fight, flight, or the you understand what I'm saying?
The avoidance of the real issue.
And so instead of addressing the real issue and helping the group move back to the work group, that's how Bion would describe it, which starts to deal with the real issues about what we know, what we don't know, what our future is like. I think I shared once the example where, I think I did. We talked about it in these once, where a seminar I had, let me put it another way. In a one-year class, when I come back after the break, I've had one-year classes, and all of a sudden my second-year students are lethargic and they're not interested, and boom, and I say, what's wrong? They say, so we had a holiday, it's tough to get back to work. Inevitably, when I said, and also it's your last semester. And you have to be thinking right now about the future, your jobs. A big part of you doesn't want to know anymore, you don't want to know. And I said, but what a waste it's going to be. Because you are now ready, because of the first 3 semesters, to do some of your best work. You're now ready to do some of your best work. And instead, if you withdraw and pull back and don't invest yourself, you're going to lose the opportunity to do some of the most important learning you can have this semester. What are you hearing from me as the instructor when I say that to you? Or when I see it even in the second semester of this new course. When that student says in the first class, I heard the syllabus is supposed to be a lot easier in the 4th semester. Remember what you said then? You said, what did you say?
I said, I have no intentions of making the syllabus any different. Actually, no, my first reaction was, I didn't get that memo. That's what I said.
So you were pissed off.
No, I said it very, jokingly, I didn't get that memo.
So that's a little like too.
Because seriously, I thought he was just kind of throwing it out there and being goofy.
In hindsight, it's the opening shot.
You don't believe it, right?
No, but in hindsight, it's the opening shot to a theme that's going to come back throughout the semester. And he is, in some ways you can see him as the work group leader. Because he's raising an issue right on the table in the 4th semester that really needs to be discussed. How are we going to use this last semester? Are we going to use it productively or not? So what's going on with that student who I keep getting this image of her with her head out trying to get air?
It's probably one of the hot rooms on the first floor.
And what's really weird for me is that in my last semester with my first year students, I was so much about the process.
Yes.
And this semester, it's like we were all talking, I've just taken on their little thing of let's just forget about this and go right through.
What were you teaching then at a course?
HBSE.
Yeah, you weren't as confident about that as your play therapy.
No.
Yeah, play therapy you feel very confident about. You feel very knowledgeable about.
Right.
And
I almost am taking the approach, which is not very much like me, which is to ignore their underlying stuff. I usually am.
Because you want to get to the curriculum.
Yeah.
Because you know it so well.
Yeah.
I do that with adult survivors of childhood sex abuse.
Well, what about, too, just thinking about what Larry was saying, thinking about my own background, too, it's like, and at least I wonder, there's last semester students, and you know, they need so much. They know so little. Let me give them as much as I can. Pack them up. Yeah. Before they go.
Well, it's almost like I go, yeah. But of course I'm feeling that way. We all did. And I really had not validated them in that. And probably because I just see it as such a normal process and that I've chosen to just
But it's normal for you. It's not normal for them. They've never experienced that before.
It's one of the major problems we have when we've gotten through a stage or developed some understanding. Okay, contracting. I think I understand contracting now. It took a while, but I know what contracting was. Why can't I understand it? It's such a simple idea. And it's not a simple idea.
Right.
It's very complex. Simpler to you now than it was maybe when you first started. To them, they got to construct that whole idea. It doesn't exist even. Dewey says knowledge doesn't exist. I don't think it does.
But Larry, the breather.
Yeah.
I think she's depressed. Yeah. I'm not kidding you.
Yes.
I think she's depressed because we did an activity, and I was giving an example, and just real quick and dirty, I had filled up most of my world with happy, and she was like, "I want your world."
So one of the dilemmas for the instructor, is how do I recognize what she may be saying at that point, which is relevant to others as well, because she's not the only one worried about a job.
Right.
And then how do I sort out the part where she's really calling for help? And I have to say to her, stop in the office.
Certainly seems kind of apparent if you're doing that several times that you're attention seeking somehow.
And that's something I'm going to deal with not in the class. I'm going to deal with in my office. And I'm going to say, there's a problem going on here, and I've noticed it, and I can see it. Are you getting any help? Can we make a referral? Do you notice this? In other words, but I don't want to lose the part of her. Remember we talked about the class as a dynamic system. Certainly Bion sees it that way, that you can't understand the behavior of one without understanding. I don't want to lose the part of her that might also be raising anxiety about graduating. They're worried about not getting a job. They're worried about getting a job. You know, there's an awful lot of stuff going on. So I want to use her as somebody who's raising an issue that is a class issue, and at the same time address the fact that...
And I think I can do that.
Yes.
She role-played with me, actually, for one of our activities, and her story that she told as just like a client was that she was really worried because she's graduating, she spent all this money, and she's going to get to graduation, she's not going to get a job. She went on and on and on and on. And it was really, I was showing a technique, and so I didn't stop afterwards and say, wow, you're a little bit worried about, but I could easily go back to that.
And then she won't have to keep acting it out in the class once the whole class addresses it. But there's also an issue. It sounds very much literally like a last-ditch call for help before I graduate. This is my last class. It may also be a sign that she sees Rebecca as somebody she can get some response from. So a last-ditch call, literally. I can't breathe. You know, will somebody notice what's going on? But I think the big mistake is just to attribute it to her. And not to understand that she's probably acting out that underlying anxiety.
She's a messenger.
She's a messenger. You know, we understand that. Play therapy, we see it all the time. Does that help us? So what do you think about Bion? Do you like him as much as I do? He's sort of, he's kind of an interesting guy that forces you to stop and rethink. We didn't get time because we're out of time, but your emotional reaction at that point, you just want to say what it was when she whines every time she starts that way. Remember your emotional reaction?
My emotional reaction to her is to do the complete opposite of what she's doing.
So,
like if she's acting...
Well, that's what you're doing. What are you feeling?
What am I feeling? I'm being dismissive. I'm feeling...
You're hostile. You're angry.
I don't really feel hostile towards her.
Well,
I really don't.
Is hostile.
Is it?
A little bit.
I just kind of... maybe a little annoyed, like
annoyed.
Like a
I'll
fly
take annoyed.
bothering you.
If I can't get hostile, I'll take annoyed.
Like a fly bothering me. Like, stop it.
Yeah.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Let's go.
That's a little bit of hostility.
But I'm not. I guess really because
What about
it's really like I'm not there, but I'm probably just like, oh, would you stop?
Like you would with a toddler.
Yeah.
She's acting like a toddler.
Yeah, she comes in each week. I'm like, oh, let's decipher some
Now,
complaint.
once it's addressed in the class, once the issue has surfaced, I'll guarantee you there are other people in that class, even those who are participating in have very similar feelings, not being ready, worried about graduation, getting a job. I'm not going to spend the whole class on that because there's other stuff, but I think I'm going to make some room for that conversation. Once that's done, once I sit her down in my office and I say, what's going on? You seem absolutely depressed. She says, oh, well, I'm worried about a job. Okay, I know you're worried about a job. Everybody's worried about that. That's understandable. But it's more than that. Once I've done that with her, once I've explored that, I am going to say to her, pull yourself up at some point. I am going to say, okay, enough. Stop opening the door and sticking your head out. If it's that bad, bring oxygen. Something, there'll be a point where I'm going to tell her I'm not going to do it anymore. And not until I've dealt with the class, and not until I've dealt with the depression. And again, I'm not a therapist. But once I've done that, she keeps it up. That's the point, I think. I'm ready to make a demand for work on her. And she wants it. She really will want it. Does that make some sense for everybody? Well, it's interesting this time of year. We always had a drop in attendance. This session, remember? You've been with us for a couple of years. You have. And I think people start to feel the pressure. I think it's a shame because I found this to be one of the most, I was going to say more, but one of the most interesting sessions that we've had in terms of the way all three examples just did it together, and how well Bion really spoke to us. So thank you for the example, and we'll tell the people that have to get the tape someday, right?